All right, so we will talk about 12.3, which is measures of dispersion. And all that really means is we are going to look at some ways we can figure out how spread out the data set is. All right. So the two common ways to discuss dispersion are range and standard deviation. The range is the easier of the two. That's just how the difference between the top value or the higher value and the lower value. That's it. So if we look at some data sets, an easy little data set, this is a 38. So we just need to pick out whatever the highest value is and what the lowest value is. Here, they have put these in order. So to find the range, all I got to do is subtract 77 from 29, and we get 48. So the range is 48. So I just subtracted 77 from 29 and got 48. All right. But then the other method of dispersion is a lot more complicated. That's standard deviation. So the concept of a standard deviation is simple. It's basically an average of how far each data set is from the mean. Okay. The problem there, if I were to just find the average, we will deal with absolute values, and that makes things very messy. So to avoid that, we will end up using squares and then square rooting that, and it just makes the math a lot easier. So we can do the standard deviation in 6 steps. And the book lists them out, and I followed those steps in the notes. And what we're going to do is take this example, that small little data set, and we're going to find the standard deviation using the process outlined in the book. Okay, so let's first look at what our data set is. So our data set is the same one we had before, 29, 38, 48, 49, 53, and 77. So the first step is we got to find the mean. And the mean for such a small set, we can assume is like the sample of some population, and that's X bar. All right, so to remember, the way we find the mean is we got to add everything up and divide by the number of things. Okay, so let's do this. So the mean, X bar, is the sum of all the things divided by n. You don't have to know that formula as it's written, but you just have to know how to do it. So the X bar for this example is, I'm going to add all of these up. It's basically the average of all of the things. If these were all test grades, to find the test average, I would add all of them up, divide by the number. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make sure I have them all in my calculation. We do. I would recommend anytime you have to add a few things up to do that calculation twice, and just to make sure you added them correctly. So I'm going to do this again. I got 294 divided by 6. I'm going to do those again. 29 plus 38 plus 48 plus 49 plus 53 plus 77, and I get that. So now I'll divide it by 6, and I get 49. So we get a nice whole number. We don't always get nice whole numbers, but we kind of want to make the concept as easy as possible. So nice numbers. Now, this is where it starts kind of seeming weird. The book says find the deviation. Well, I guess I wish they had said, used a different word or included that all that means is the difference. I want to figure out the difference between each entry and the mean. So I want to know x minus x bar. If each of these things is an x, x1, x2, x3, x4, x5, x6, for each of these items, I want to find x minus x bar. Okay. And I think what I'm going to do on another sheet of paper, as I work through these, now that I've got this mean, another sheet of paper, I'm going to make a table. And as I go through the process, I'll add stuff to it. So in my table, I'm going to first do x. X is going to be me just listing out my 6 items. Okay, so this will be my first column. In fact, I'm going to change. I want to go sideways. I might decide I want more space. So you'll probably be fine if you don't do this sideways, but if I elaborate on any of these, I want to be able to do that. Okay. So my first little column here is X. This will be each of my entries, each of my data items, 29, 38, 48, 49, 53, and 77. All right. So the first thing I need to do is find all of my x minus x bars. Okay. And I'm going to, in red, I'm going to write step 2 so you know what we're doing here. Okay. I'm going to write all of this out. So if x is 29, x minus x bar is 29 minus my mean, which was 49. Now, if the number is less than the mean, like 29, I'm going to get a minus number, a negative number, okay? I'm okay with that. I am perfectly fine with that. If the number is bigger than the mean, like 53, we'll get a positive number when we do this. All right, 38 minus 49 is a minus or negative 11. 48 minus 49 is minus 1. 49 minus itself, well, that makes sense that it's 0. And then 53 minus 49 is 4. We're starting to get the positive numbers. And then 77 minus 49, I believe, is 28. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put some lines here. Because I'm going to continue this table, I need some more stuff. All right. Now, here's the thing that is going to force us to take these numbers and square them. So soon I will square each of these numbers, but I want to show you why, okay? If I add up all of these numbers, what do I get? So pause the video, see if you get the same thing I get. Okay, so I've added those up. I got 0 if I add up all of these x minus x bars. Okay. That is our first issue, and that's why we have to square these numbers in a minute. In fact, this is called, this is what I almost showed a little early. If we add all the x's, if we add all the x minus x bars, so that's what we're doing here, the sum of all the x minus x bars, we will get 0. Okay, that is and I tell you this because in the homework, you have, I think it's about 4 problems. It says, find the sum of deviations. Well, the sum of deviations is 0. This is always going to work out. If you did this step correctly, you will get 0 if you add them up. Okay. So if I'm looking for an average and I add everything up and always get 0, that doesn't help me find an average. So what we got to do to kind of fix that, if you will, is in step 3. It wants us to square each deviation. Okay, so here's my next column. Okay, so to square each deviation, I'm going to do x minus x bar squared. This is my step 3. Okay. And I'm going to show the work, although you really, if I was working this out on the homework, I would do this step and then get this number and then square it. But I want to show it to you in this order. So here's the first thing I want to mention. I don't know if we've had to deal with it too much, negative numbers, that is. If I square a negative number, I will always get a positive number. Okay, so I'm doing minus 20 squared in the calculator. All right, and I get 400. I want to show you what happens if you were to do this without the parentheses. If you said minus 20 squared, okay, if you type this, you get a minus 400. This is wrong because I'm not squaring. Oh, I'm sorry. What it's telling you, if you type, oops, let's do it again, minus 20 squared. If I type minus 20 squared, then the calculator reads that. I'll show you right now. Minus 20 squared, the calculator reads it as that. So you have to be careful to always put parentheses so that this number here in step 3 is always positive. Okay. You probably already know that anytime you square a number, it's positive. So rather than do the negatives here, just type 20 squared. Okay, and you will not make that mistake. All right, so here we go. Minus 11 squared is 121. Minus 1 squared is 1. 0 squared is 0. 4 squared is 16. 28 squared, well, that one's a little more challenging. 28 squared is 784. Okay. So a while ago when I added up the deviations and I got 0, like I said, that doesn't help me. So what I'm going to do is we did this, we squared everything. We're going to add all of those up, and in a minute, we're going to take the square root of something. Okay? So now for step 4, it says to add everything from step 3, and we could call that the sum of the x minus x bar squared. So we're going to just take each of these and add those up. Okay. I'm going to put the answer here, but I'm going to show you what I'm typing in, what I'm about to do. Okay. This notation looks confusing, but that's all it means. So in this box, I'm going to do 400 plus 121 plus 1 plus 0 plus 16 plus 784. Okay, so I got to add those 5 or 6 numbers together. I'm going to do it twice. I want to make sure that I don't make a mistake typing those numbers. Okay, I got 1322. 1322. I'm going to do it again to make sure I got 1322. And I did. All right. The next thing I'm going to do, now that I have these numbers, we total them up. We are going to take we're going to divide by n minus 1, okay? Maybe what I should have said is divide the result in step 4 by n minus 1. I think I should be a little more specific. That's what I was just writing. Okay. Divide the result in step 4 by n minus 1. All right. So, here we go. I don't think I need my table per se. So I'm just gonna say right here, this is gonna be step 5. So this piece right here was step 4. Doing that. Step 5, I'm going to take what I had in step 4 and divide it by n minus 1. Well, I didn't write it down, but in this case, maybe I'll put it right here. N is equal to, we got to look at however many things we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so if n is equal to 6, then I'm going to divide by 6 minus 1. Well, look, you know 6 minus 1 is 5, so don't type 1322 divided by 6 minus 1. Just do 1322 divided by 5. Okay? So I'm going to do that divided by 5, and I get a decimal, 2264.4. In this case, I get that number exactly. Okay? If it was a decimal that went on forever, I would leave that in my calculator. If the decimal went on forever, leave that number in the calculator for step next, which is 6. Okay. In this case, it was exact, so that's the number I got. By the way, what we are doing, what I'm showing you is I'm building you up to the formula, but rather than start off with the formula and try to work this out with the formula, we're just going to work it out. And if you don't want to know all of that notation with the sigmas, you don't have to. That's extra information. All right, so in step 6, all I got to do is take the square root of what's in step 5. Okay? So take, and I have it written there, take the square root of whatever you had in step 5. And I know that notation is awful, but I think it makes sense. Okay, so I got that number. Okay, so the square root of 264.4. And I'm going to show you, if that number is already in your calculator, I'm going to show you how I can do the problem, step 6, without having to retype square root of 264.4. Okay, so if you're here, all right, there it is. I'm going to do second, push the second button. Where that caret button is, down here, we do square root. Let me back it up. All right, let's say my answer was 264.4. Okay, there it is. I'll do square root, which is second. Oh, I was pushing the wrong button. It's the second x squared button. Okay, second x squared. And I'm going to do second answer. And it puts the number that was in our calculator. And we can do equals, and we get 16.26038813. That number probably goes on forever. It will tell you how they want you to round it. Most homework problems say round 2 decimal places or round to the nearest hundredths. So my final answer is 16.26. That is a lot of work to do for one problem. But that is how it is done. In case you were wondering what the formula for standard, let me say it this way, for sample standard deviation, we use the following. It is the square root of all of the deviation squared added up over n minus 1. Take the square root of all of that. That is messy. In fact, it's upsetting the camera here. Maybe I should make it larger. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So it's a little s, that's the notation. X minus x bar squared over n minus 1. So we are taking the square root of all that. So the easiest thing to do is this 6 steps we did. It's easier, however, to use the 6 steps. Okay. And at the end of the day, we got the same answer. Okay. Now, I'm sure some of you are not even happy with that and you think it takes too long. And it does. I mean, this is nothing more than an algorithm. And it turns out we can do this a lot quicker if we use our calculator. Okay. So, I'm going to show you how to do this using the calculator that we have. All right, so I'm going to work it with you. You may find, if you're not tech savvy, you may decide that this is more complicated than the 6 steps that we talked about. But here we go. So on the calculator, we will do the following. So on the calculator, there's our data sets. Okay, the first thing I got to do, step 1, we got to tell our calculator that we got to be in statistics mode. So I'm going to do second. Let me show you where we're at. I think mine's in statistics mode, but I want to show you how to do it. Second data button. And you see we got 1 var, 2 var. Okay. So it should at that point tell me, and very small, we're in statistics mode. Okay. So I'm going to write second data. Now, I need to make sure if I do this for several problems, or if this is not your calculator, we need to clear the data. So I'm going to write clear data. I'll show you how to do it. Okay. Here we are in statistics mode. So I did second stat. If I had to get there again, we can do that. Second data. And you'll notice 1 var, 2 var. Well, yeah, so we did 1 var. We're going to do that right there. 1 var. And now we'll clear data. Okay, so, whoops. Oh, so you saw that, it's calculating. So 1 var, 2 var, we're in one variable, so we did 1 var. But when we get to that page, we want to clear data after we did 1 var. Okay, so clear data, second data, and you got to go over to, it's CLRDATA. All right, that's just to get anything that might be living in the calculator out. Especially since our data set's so small that if you had a data set somewhere that was much larger, there's going to be some lingering around if you don't do that. So step 3. Okay. Now let's see. We will do data button. We got to put the data in. So data button. Now you see X1. Well, these guys are my variables, X1, X2, X3, X4, X5, X6. Okay. So to put X1 in, let's see here, that's 29. If you push the down button, then it says frequency. Well, the frequency for all of these are 1. Okay, so I'm going to do the down arrow again. X2, 38. I'm going to do the down arrow each time. Okay, frequency is 1. 48. Did frequency down. X4, 49. We only have it once. X5 is 53. Frequency 1, and X6, 77, frequency 1. Then it'll keep going for a while. I don't know how long. Okay. Now, we have just input our data. And so let me write that down. Input each data item for X1 through X sub n, however many data items you got. Okay, now I'm going to do, I think, step 4. I'm going to do second. No, I take it back. I push the second button, but I push it again because I'm not doing second. At this point, I want to click that little stat bar button, and that's going to do all of the work that we just did plus some. Okay, so stat bar. And you see it says calculating, and that was quick because there's not much. So let me show you what it spits out. You see the 6, but I want to see, there we go. It says n equals 6. That's because there's n items. If I scroll over, it tells me x bar is 49. So it'll do the mean for you. Truth be told, it's probably quicker just to do the mean manually rather than type this in. And then you see 2 options for your standard deviation. You have SX or sigma X. Sigma is for population. We're not really going to talk about that. So S sub X or S is 16.26, and it keeps going, but the number that I got was 16.26. Okay, so if you want to rewatch the video and make sure you can do this by yourself, you can do that. Some problems require you to do like kind of some of the individual steps, but if the problem just says find the standard deviation, then you can use that, and that might save you time. But if I'm going to be honest, I would work it out by hand and then check it with the calculator, just to make sure, because then you would have 2 calculations. And it's a possibility that when you typed it in with the calculator, you may have missed some entry. So you may have to do that a couple times. Okay.